Hello, what is up? Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my June monthly book wrap up. I'm so excited to talk about some of the books today. Once again, kind of flowing with the theme of May. A lot of bad books, a lot of mediocre books, and only one 5-star read. So let's just jump into it because I'm just so excited about some of the good books that I read this month. And as always, I'm just gonna pull up my document because I love to make notes when I'm reading. And let's talk about the first book I read, which was Birds of California. I actually bought this book, but I ended up giving it away because I donate all of my books that are under 3 stars, like physical copies. I really try and only keep 4- and 5-star reads. This was a 2-star read. I did not like this book at all. This is about Fiona, who is a former child actor who kind of like dropped off the face of the planet and like the spotlight after like a big like humiliating crash and burn situation. And then you also meet Sam, who is an actor who was her brother on the show that they were in together, like their like sitcom. And basically both of like their like publicists and all these people are trying to get them back together to do a reboot, and it's a love story, so you can see where this is going. Triggers for this are grooming, terminal illness, disordered eating, and PTSD. Let me just say, the back cover of this was so misleading because it literally said that it was a mix of the Kiss Quotient and beach read. It was not. This was not a rom-com, and that was like the most deceiving back cover comparison in the entire world. Everything about this book annoyed me at the end of the day. The characters, the plot, the conflict, like it was all just super annoying. There was nothing about this book that I liked, to be quite honest. The ending sucked. There was no resolution. There was no character development. Like I could not even find one positive thing to say about this book. I found that the like spicy scenes were just awful. No chemistry between the characters. I couldn't decide if this was like supposed to be a rom-com or a soap opera book or both. Like I had no idea what this book was doing, to be quite honest. Like not a great way to start the month off with this read. And I ended the book with a lot of questions, like a lot of plot holes and unanswered questions, which I absolutely hate. So yeah, no quotes I liked. Did not like this book at all. Then I read Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino, which is my first book by her. I have not read Before We Were Strangers. Highly, highly talked about by Rachel Catherine here on YouTube. I really, really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.25 stars. This is a second chance romance. Lynn, who is just like your average everyday gal, and she picks up this book by the author Jay Colby, which is like this mysterious author. No one knows who he is. There's like no pictures of him, and it's like a recent bestseller. And she starts reading it, and from like the very first page she realizes that it's actually written by Jace, who is her like best friend and first love. And the book that she's reading is about their love story. And basically it is like a past and present about her reading the book, and then also you get to like learn about their like love story and, you know, their childhood and growing up together. The back just says, imagine opening a book and discovering that someone else has written your life story. It was emotionally exhausting though. Like it was equally heartwarming and heartbreaking, if that makes sense. I love a good story within a story. It can be done so wrong, but I found that Renee did it so well, so perfectly. And honestly, the only reason it's not 5 stars is it just didn't like hit that spot for me. It was great, but it wasn't like amazing, if that makes sense. But I highly recommend everyone read it. I feel like this book is not talked about enough. And the quote that I liked from this was, we can't always control our circumstances, who our parents are, where we live, or how much money we make. But in those rare moments when we can shape our fate, when we do have the power to make our own happiness, we can't be too scared to do it. So yeah, this was a beautiful book. I will definitely be rereading this. We have Hush Little Baby by R.H. Herron, which I picked this up at Walmart. I had never heard anything about this author before, and boy, this was a good thriller. I gave this 4 stars. Anyways, this is about Jillian. She's an OB who's currently pregnant, and her wife just left her for like a hot young gal. Long story short, she got kicked out at 17. Her mom was like super religious. She had a drinking problem. She went to rehab, and the story is all about the weird little things that start happening in her house that she notices, like a little gas leak, items are moving, and you're kind of trying to figure out why or who's moving them and like what the sitch is. The only reason I didn't give this 5 stars is because the first third of the book is really slow. It's definitely a lot more women's fiction, but the last 2/3 are 5-star, if that makes sense. So maybe I should have rated this 4.5. But it's definitely slow. You have to give it like 100 pages, and then I promise you it starts to pick up. I'm sure you guys know this by now, but I don't normally like when the whodunit is exposed like in the 2/3 part of the book, and then you're kind of just like reading the last like third knowing what happens. But in this book, it's done super well. I loved the ending, and I really enjoyed this book. Honestly, I loved the concept, and this, I just like really love thrillers that touch on motherhood too. I don't know why, but this was super well done. I will definitely be reading her other books. Okay, then I read Sinner by Sierra Simone, which is the second book in the Priest series, which is one of the spiciest series I have ever read. I love Sierra Simone. I gave this 4 stars, and this is about Sean, who's like a little manho. He's like a venture capitalist, rich man vibes. Y'all know the drill by now. And he meets this girl at a fundraiser event and is like, oh, she's cute, and realizes it's his best friend's little sister. Anyways, she's currently on her nun journey, and basically Zenny is her name. She goes up to him and is like, I want to get laid before I become a nun. And you can guess where it goes from here. So tropes in this are best friend, sister, age gap, forbidden romance, and like millionaire romance. I loved this book. Spicy, the characters were flawed. I loved the two of them together. The spicy scenes were very spicy. And I really have enjoyed the pre-series because not only is it a romance, but it just like doubles as like religious issues and social issues in society. And I think Sierra Simone does such a great job at this. Obviously, I know the whole like Christian, religious, nun, priest romance thing isn't for everyone, but I really like this series. And I read Time After Time by Lisa Grunwald. I gave this 2.5 stars. I think this is a Kindle daily deal, so it was like $1.99. The concept was really great. The execution, not so much. Joe works at Grand Central Station. It takes place in 1937, and he sees this really beautiful woman waiting for a train. It's Nora, and she looks very out of place. Like, she's not from this decade. Anyways, year after year, there's like this solar event that happens. She keeps coming back. She's kind of a love story, but they're trying to figure out why she keeps coming back on this like solar event, which is called Manhattanage, which is basically when the rising sun lines up with the east-west grid in Manhattan. The idea behind the book is like absolutely amazing, but I've just realized I don't love time travel, especially in historical romance. Like, time travel it just doesn't work for me. Characters were not developed. I just like didn't feel tied to them, and so I just didn't really care about the story, to be quite honest. Like, when you don't care about the characters, you don't care about the story. I didn't like the ending. It really pissed me off. And I felt like it just deserved one last edit. Like, there was a lot of unnecessary scenes in this book that definitely could have been cut out. But like I said, the idea was good. It just like wasn't executed well, and the storyline wasn't strong enough to hold the idea. Then I read my first Alice Feeney book, which was Rock, Paper, Scissors, and 4.75 stars. Amazing. This is about a couple who realize their marriage is in trouble, so they go on like a little weekend getaway. Turns out it's in this like abandoned church. There's like a snowstorm. They have their dog with them, and basically just like weird stuff starts happening, and you're trying to figure out who and why. This was like really creepy, but like creepy on like a horror level almost, like not like a suburban thriller where it's like, oh, the husband killed someone, blah blah blah, someone's cheating. Like, this was like creepy. Like, I had goosebumps reading this, and I had to put it down at night. Like, it was actually eerie and creepy. This will end up being one of the best thrillers I have read all year, like no doubt about it. Loved that the present chapters were mixed with anniversary letters that the wife was writing to the husband. Like, that was so cool. I love the way that she did it. The plot twists were absolutely mind-blowing. Like, I still cannot stop thinking about this book, to be quite honest with you guys. And the only reason I didn't rate it a full 5 stars is because the characters annoyed me, but the plot, the whodunit, like everything was amazing. So 5 stars with like 4 star characters. Then one of my biggest disappointments of the year, 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I was so excited to read this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is about Eva and Shane, who were together in high school for like a week, which to begin with is not my favorite trope. Like, it's so unbelievable. I hate the whole like we fell in love in a week trope. Like, that's not believable. Like, no, this is real life. Basically, they both went on to become best-selling authors, and then they meet up at like a literary event. I think it's 15 years later. Yeah, 15 years later. And the fate of the world gives them like another 7 days together in June, obviously. I will say that there's like really great diverse representation in this. Like, I really enjoyed reading it. Trigger warnings to drug and alcohol abuse, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, attempted suicide, and neglect. And it's kind of basically like a second chance romance, childhood to strangers to lovers. I will say that the supporting characters in this like added so much to this book. So much pizzazz, so much spark, so much sass. I loved the supporting characters in this. I think my issue is I went into this expecting like a modern literary like revolutionary romance, because that's what everyone was calling it, but it was really just like a light pop culture second chance romance. Like, it wasn't this like revolutionary romance of the decade that a lot of people were saying it was. I did really appreciate reading about her chronic migraines. As someone who has chronic migraines myself, reading about her chronic illness and the inclusion of an invisible disability, like, I just felt so much less alone. I definitely felt like a lot less alone, and it was really, really great to read. Tia Williams, the author, wrote about it perfectly. I enjoyed the mother-daughter relationship in this too. See, I found the constant pop culture references like just too much for me. I know a lot of people love those, but it was just like way too much. Like, a few is cute, there was like way too many, and it kind of just felt a little YA to me, so definitely let me down. Then we have People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd. I rated this 3.5 stars, another Kindle Daily Deal. This is about an Instagrammer. Her name is Emmy. She's like a mommy blogger, and basically her marriage starts to crack and she kind of starts getting stalked almost, and it kind of just shows you the dark side of influencer culture, which is really, really cool to read about. It had a really strong beginning, but once again, the issue, is it women's fiction? Is it a thriller? Who knows? I hate that when books can't distinguish between the two. It was very intriguing, but the plot was super predictable, and there was a lot of editing errors. Like, it definitely needed another look over by an editor or publisher or whoever. One of my biggest pet peeves with books is when it's multiple POV and they don't tell you they're changing POV. Like, it would be the husband's chapter, and then all of a sudden it would just like switch to italics, and it would be like the stalker, and you'd be like, wait, like what? Who's talking? Who's thinking? What is going on? I felt very unsatisfied with the ending. It was anticlimactic, and like, when I end a thriller and my first thought is like, okay, that's it, that's how I know it was like very meh. I think it's like a light, easy thriller read, but I wouldn't like necessarily go out of your way to pay a lot of money for it. Then one of my only 5-star reads of the month, A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. I am so shocked that I liked this as much as I did. It was on Kindle Unlimited, and I was like, you know what, I'll give it a go. I don't usually like high school, prep school, academia romance. It's not really my thing. Like, After wasn't really my vibe, but this book was so beautiful. So beautiful. Definitely written more maturely than a YA. Like, amazing. This is about Ren. She's like an untouchable girl at Lancaster Prep. Like, she's a virgin, good girl, literally After vibes. Crew is this like grouchy bad boy who wants to get to her, and they're paired together on a school project. Very like drama-filled angst teens at like a rich boarding school vibes. This was so much spicier. The lollipop scene, if you know, you know. Like, this was insanely spicy. But yeah, I didn't expect to love this as much as I did. There's just so many cute little things in this book that I don't want to ruin, but please go read it. There's just like so much meaning behind it. I did tear up like once or twice, which you guys know is not like me, and it just wrapped up so beautifully. It was such an amazing book. I don't want to give too much away. Like, please just go read this. If you read anything this month, please read this book. Then one of my highly anticipated reads of the year, A Stranger in the House by Sherry Lapina. My friend Brianna was like, girl, you need to read this, and I really love Sherry Lapina. I'm like slowly getting through her books only because I know how amazing they are. Like, I just want to savor them all. This was 4.5 stars for me. This is basically about Tom and Karen, who are somewhat newlyweds that have the perfect life in suburbia with like a nice big house, great stable jobs, blah, blah, blah. One night he comes home and finds out that his wife is not here, and then gets a call that she was in a car accident on like the bad side of town, and she doesn't remember anything from that. So they're trying to like piece together what happened. And Sherry Lapina just like knows how to write a good thriller. Like, she will never let me down. There were so many plot twists in this. I didn't really like the main characters in this, honestly, but I liked their story, if that makes sense. And the only reason this is not 5 stars for me is the ending was literally so stupid. Like, I was shocked that Sherry Lapina wrote that kind of ending, and there's no sequel. So it kind of ends on a cliffhanger, which I don't love. So that's the only reason it's 4.5 stars and not 5. Then I read The Truth About Love by Maisie Myers, and I rated this 4.25 stars. Another Kindle Unlimited read recommended by Rachel. It is like one of those like soulmates that you find in high school kind of stories. This is about Auden and Summer Rain, and basically it's just about them like getting together in high school, and then like life happens, and they're trying to find their way back to each other multiple times. And this is like the most gut-wrenching love story ever. It's just about 2 soulmates who like keep getting together when it's not their time, if that makes sense. Like, right person, wrong time, total situation. I just loved it. Like, these characters were so flawed, but they like made each other better. Honestly heavy and heartbreaking and so realistic, and it was so good. Trigger warnings to suicide and depression. And the only reason I didn't rate this 5 stars is it was like a little too sad for me, if you know what I mean. Like, it was a little too sad, but it was still a really, really great read. The quote I liked from this was, "I'd wait 1,000 lifetimes if only to hold you in my arms one more time." So cute. Then I read How to Fake It in Hollywood by Ava Wilder, which I rated like 3.25 stars. This was another letdown, to be quite honest. I was really expecting a lot from this book, and it did not meet expectations. This is about Gray, who Gray just finished on like a long-running soap opera, and she's like kind of trying to find her place in Hollywood now. And then there's also Ethan, who he just went through like a high-profile divorce. He has a little bit of alcohol issues, and basically their publicists want them to fake a love affair. So it's kind of like a, I would say like dating of convenience, not marriage of convenience. And y'all know the drill with this kind of stuff. Trigger warnings to like alcohol abuse, substance abuse, all that stuff. Definitely is not a lighthearted rom-com. It's like very, very deep and talks a lot about substance abuse. I didn't hate this book though. Like, it was just a little too much for me. Like, it was just a little too dark and a little too angsty for me, if that makes sense. I definitely feel like I would read more by this author, but I don't know, maybe I just was expecting a lighthearted like rom-com, but this was just like a little too dark for me. I personally just think like the ending just kind of dragged on a little too much. Like, the first half was really good, the last half was mediocre. All right, you guys, then I read a nonfiction book, which I talked about in my reset, but I read Between Two Kingdoms by Salika Jaoud, which was amazing. If you guys don't know, I worked on a hematology unit for 4 years, and so I worked with bone marrow transplant patients, and this was just such a beautiful, amazing book. I think everyone needs to read this book. Basically, Sulika was diagnosed with leukemia right before her 23rd birthday, or 23rd birthday. And it's all about her like 4 years of chemo and going through her bone marrow transplant and like that whole journey. And it's just so beautiful to see it from the patient's perspective. It was incredible. And it just says, Between Two Kingdoms is a profound chronicle of survivorship and a fierce, tender, and inspiring exploration of what it means to begin again. I gave this like 1,000,000 stars, like infinity stars. It was so beautiful. You just need to read it. I actually annotated it quite a bit too. All right, then a moment. I did it. I finished A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Okay, I rated this 4 stars. Same thing with ACOTAR. I know the books get better, so I can't get this 5 stars if I know it's gonna get better. This was great. See the pink thing though? The pink is where it starts to get good. So I know a lot of you guys were saying like I'm trying to get into it and I just can't, and literally I wrote here's where it starts to get good. It takes a while, and everyone was like there's just gonna be a random moment where the book just clicks for you, and that's where it is. So if you're reading this, page 126, which is right, I think, is that right before the Valaris? Yeah, it's the same chapter as like the Where Are We Going to Valaris, the City of Starlight, which is like a famous TikTok sound you guys have heard. But so good. I cannot wait to keep reading. Like, I'm finally hooked now. It takes like a book and a quarter and you'll get hooked. The plot twist, the banter, it was magical, it was sexy. I don't usually love triangles, but I don't even think this is about a love triangle. I think it's more just like growing up and realizing what you actually want from a partner. Sarah's development in this is amazing. This book is just like leagues above the first one. Like, her writing just gets better every time. I've only read 2, but still I can imagine the writing is just gonna keep getting better. And then my favorite quote from this was, to the people who look at the stars and wish, to the stars who listen and the dreams that are answered. I just can't say enough good things. You need to do it. Just give it a chance, please, please, please. And then the last book I read was My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey, which, big letdown. I gave this 2.5, maybe 3 stars to be nice. This is about a bounty hunter and a teacher who like fall in love on summer vacation. It's supposed to be like a murder mystery / romance, and it was like a light quick read for summer, but very short too, but it just wasn't, it did not hit the spot this month. I was a little bummed honestly with this one. I had really high hopes, but I don't love the insta love in this. Who the heck has fallen in love in 4 days? Like, what? I feel like it needed to be murder mystery or romance, not both. Like, I just didn't like both together. Definitely feel like Tessa Bailey could write a murder mystery on its own, but like I said, I just don't think the combination works. The characters were cute, likable, and they had some chemistry, but overall, like, it didn't hit like Hook, Line, and Sinker did. You know what I mean? So, not the vibe. But let me know down below what one book you read this month was that you loved. Maybe let me know your 5-star read or like your most disappointing read. I would love to know. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!